So we will need a little bit of code, but you can find it at the bottom of this post. So underneath the video that I will add in here. Let's first take a quick look at the hype file and see what we need to prepare there. And then I'll show you where to copy and paste these codes and if something needs to be adjusted. Let's head over to hype and we can see how I have my background image. This one is just pinned and scaled to all the sides with an expand to fill. And we have some text in the bottom left corner because Unsplash. And we have the buttons up here inside of their own group. Each button is a group as well because it consists of, you don't care. On the button itself, we will then add the function that will open up the pop-up. But we do need the pop-up. For this, I first want everything to be in a group because everything should be blurred. Instead of blurring every element separately, it's much easier to put everything in a group. I select all of my elements here, group them together, then I adjust the group to be the exact same size of my scene. I double check that everything worked. This looks great. Then I tell the group to be pinned and scaled to all the sides. If doing this means essentially that the group does exactly what the browser does, and therefore it's sort of like non-existent, but we can tell the group to do things. So let's call this one maybe main wrapper. Then I can close it. I don't need it right now. Next, I want to have something that sits on top in white. I will create a rectangle for this, very important. Always get rid of the tiny border here on the edge first, so set this to 0. Then we can give it whatever color we want. So I want this to be a pure white. This should be the exact same size as my scene, so I let it snap, double check. This looks good, and I pin and scale this to all the sides. So this means essentially this is covering everything no matter what the browser size is. I go to my options here and I make it a little bit transparent, maybe like 50% or so. And I rename this by double clicking it and I call this one cover. Next, I will need the element that will contain our Divi website, and that essentially is just a rectangle. So I just create a rectangle, again, get rid of the border, I give it a color. Since the default background color of a Divi page usually is white, I will also make this here with a white background. Then I will put it onto my scene. I hold on the Alt key to shrink it from the sides, and without the Alt key, I shrink it from the top. So I just have a small pop-up here. This will be my work. Oops. Work. Then I also want an X over here, and I have that somewhere. Let me quickly drag it in. Alrighty. So here I make this a little bit smaller and I put it in the top right corner. The cover is pinned and scaled to all the sides, which is good, and so should the work be. So I pin it to all the sides and let it also scale. This makes sure that it always aligns with the bottom and that the distance left, right, and top is always fixed in pixels. The cancel button in this case should be pinned to the top left corner, obviously. Do not use any options in here. So this container where we will input the Divi page should always be pinned to all the sides, probably, and it should only be set to stretch without zooming the contents. That's very important. Next, we need to create a timeline that makes all of this stuff disappear. To keep things simple, I will also put all of this stuff here into a group, and I make sure that the group acts as if this is just not there. So pinned and scaled everywhere, not zooming contents, only stretch the group itself. I will call this one pop-up. And at first, this pop-up should not be visible. Of course, this could also be animated a little bit smoother, but generally I would keep pop-ups as quickly as possible, so I will just work with the visibility here. I set this to hidden, so at the beginning this entire group is as if this doesn't exist. If you only play with the opacity, the element would be transparent, but we could not click on the buttons because the pop-up group and all the contents are sitting on top of it. If, however, this is set to hidden, it will be completely gone unless we turn it on. All right, let's go to the animation. We'll go to the timeline, create a new one. Let's call this one pop-up. Then we hit the record button and we go 1 frame forward. We select the pop-up group and we set it to visible. I will select the main wrapper and I will go here to the blur and maybe add a blur of 10 pixels. Then I stop the recording. So essentially, as soon as we click on a button, it should go from this to this. Of course, we could also animate this further if you wanted to, but here I will keep it fairly simple. Next up, how to add the code. We will go up to our buttons. Let's take the first button here. We will go to the actions and we will say on mouse click, we wanted to run some JavaScript. And we say that we want to create a new function. Let's call this one work1. In here, you then want to add the code from the page here. This is the code to call out the pop-up. So we take it, we copy it, make sure that you go all the way to the right. Then going back to Hype, we can just paste it in. The first three variables are something that you might want to change. First, we have the container ID. So we need to tell the script, what is our container? So the work group here, this white rectangle. Here, I called it work. It's not enough to just rename the layer here. You also have to go to the information and give it a unique ID. That is work. Then in here, it's called work. My timeline is called popup. So if you called this anything other than popup, make sure to adjust it in the code. Or if you're afraid to do so, you can also go to the scene settings, choose the popup timeline here, double click it, and just rename it so it says exactly popup. Lastly, we will need a link that should be input to it. For that, I already have a few pages prepared. So we remember from the Divi tutorials, this is the first and the second page. I just got rid of the header here because it's not needed. And I need to get the direct link. Because this is already published, I can see the direct link up here. If this, however, says anything other than your domain and then the name of the project, so if it says something like P question mark 220 or something, do not use that link. Instead, you really want to use the permalink. You can find that by going to the page. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the permalink. And this is the link that we need to input. So I copy this link, I go back to Hype, and I input it in here. Okay, I copied a little bit too much. Okay, so this is the code in there. Then the rest is done automatically. Essentially, it calls the pop-up timeline and it plays it forward. Then it looks for the container, and then it tells the container to add an iframe with a specific link, and it should fill the entire frame. And that's pretty much it. Let's go back here. Let's go back to the main timeline. Choose our first button. And well, we've already added that. So essentially this should actually work. Let's open this up in the browser, Command and Enter. I can hover over this, click it, and I can see how it opens up and it shows my work, and I can scroll through and I can not close out of it yet. By the way, this bar that you see here is only visible to you because I am right now logged into my WordPress page over here. And also this website knows that I'm still logged in, so it shows me the WordPress header and everything. If you want to see what this looks like if another person is visiting your page, you can take this URL that Hype gives you, copy it, and open up a private window. For most browsers, the shortcut is Command-Shift-N, and it opens up an incognito window, and there I can paste this and open it up. And now when I open this, you can see how I don't have the WordPress bar at the top, and it's just like another user's opening this up. Let's now take a look at how we add the closing function to this. So I go back here, to Hype, and I select my console button, the one in the top left corner. I go to my actions and I say on mouse click, run JavaScript, and it should be a new function. Let's call this one close popup. Then I will go back to the post. Then it's the second code down here, and this is the one to close it. We copy it, go back to Hype, and paste the code in here. Again, we have to tell the code what is the work container and what is the timeline called. and then the rest is happening automatically. It will reverse the timeline, it will look for the container, and it will remove the iframe that it has created in it. Let's see if this works. Command Enter to open this up. I click here, it opens up my page. I click here, and it goes back. Then to do it for a second word, very simple, just create another function. Let's go down to our button number 2. Then we go to the actions, on mouse click, run JavaScript, but we can't use the same function here. We always have to create a new function. So new function, but we can copy the stuff that we've done for the first function. So we copy the code and we paste it in here. Double check, work, pop-up, looks good, but the link should be different. So here I will take the second project link and I paste it into here. Always make sure that the quotes remain. If a quote is missing, then the entire code does not work. So you want to be very careful with this. Then I call this one work 2, so I can easily find it later. And that's it. When I now open this up, I click on the first one, it loads my first page. I click on the other one, and it loads my second page. And that's it.